Why the office building model is breaking. Morning comes. The lights turn on. The air systems start. The building is ready for work. But fewer people are coming. Act 1. The broken model. For decades, we built office buildings assuming work would always come to one place. Big structures, fixed layouts, centralized systems that tie everyone together. Today, that model is breaking. Shared heating, cooling, power, and hallways. Offices are becoming obsolete faster than ever, not because people stopped working, but because the buildings can't adapt. Renovations create massive waste. Investors are exposed to growing risk from unstable demand, people using offices less often and less predictably, risk from fixed costs that don't scale down, big bills that stay high, even when buildings are partly empty, risk from capital locked into one rigid building, money stuck in one design and one use, risk from obsolescence arriving faster than previous norms, buildings becoming outdated sooner as technology and work patterns change. This model concentrates too many risks into one rigid asset. Too much value depends on one outcome, and the environmental cost is far higher than most people realize. Waste from repeated remodels, waste from premature demolition, waste from oversized systems running empty space, waste from buildings that must be replaced instead of adapted. 2. The hidden environmental cost. When people talk about green office buildings, they usually mean lower energy use, better heating, better cooling, better lighting. But most of the environmental damage happens before anyone even moves in. It takes enormous amounts of concrete, steel, glass, trucks, fuel, and years of work to build a large office building. To justify that environmental cost, the building has to last a long time. But without much notice, that cost grows when interiors are torn out again and again to keep up with new tenants and changing ways of working. And often buildings are replaced long before they wear out, not because they failed, but because work moved somewhere else or the land became more valuable for a different use. The problem is much bigger than energy use. It's building something permanent in a world that keeps changing. For more than a century, work was tied to place. Where the job was located often decided where people lived. But that relationship is changing. 2.5. Location is no longer fixed. Work is no longer tied to one place. Technology changed where work can happen. People noticed. Housing choices changed. Commutes became optional. And for the first time in generations, location became flexible. Cities still matter. They remain centers of culture, services, and connection. But work no longer requires everyone to gather inside one large building every day. That changed the risk calculation. When people can move, demand can move. When demand moves, buildings must adapt. Traditional office buildings cannot. They are designed for one location, one density, one pattern of use. But the next generation of workspaces must follow people, instead of waiting for people to return. Flexibility is no longer a convenience. It is becoming a requirement. 3. What the pandemic revealed. The pandemic didn't create the problems with office buildings. It exposed them. Buildings designed for constant occupancy suddenly had none. Centralized ventilation, shared hallways, enclosed lobbies. When people stopped coming in, the building stopped working. Rents collapsed. Energy systems still ran. The asset kept costing money without producing value. 4. Concentrated investor risk. Traditional office buildings concentrate risk. One roof, one HVAC system, one heating and cooling system serving everyone. When it runs, everyone pays, whether the space is used or not. One layout. During the pandemic, investors learned a hard lesson. When offices shut down, there was no partial failure. The entire investment could fail at once. Rent stopped, utility systems kept running, and losses piled up every day. Fixed costs stayed high. That's called a stranded asset. a building that still costs money but no longer produces value. Flexibility was zero. 5. Site disruption and inflexibility. Large office buildings require major site disruption. They commit the land to one long-term outcome: deep foundations, large concrete structures dug far into the ground, heavy excavation, long construction timelines. The land is locked into one use, one form, one outcome, whether it still makes sense or not. Large office buildings can't adapt during disruption. You can't isolate units. You can't relocate space. The building either operates or it doesn't. 6. A different development model. Now imagine a different approach. Instead of one large asset carrying every risk, but many independent ultra-high-performance monolithic modular buildings, each profitable or not on its own, built only as needed, expanded over time, designed to adapt when work changes. 7. Profitable land use. Idle land still costs money, especially when the future is unclear. Development projects stall. Demand for improvements becomes unclear. Doing nothing still costs money, and waiting for certainty can mean waiting forever. But committing to a large permanent building can make the risk much worse. Ultra-high-performance monolithic modular buildings make it possible to use land now without locking in the future. When site needs change, these units don't become stranded. They can be removed, relocated, or sold for reuse instead of demolished. These units don't require deep foundations. Most sites need only gravel pads or shallow slabs on grade. Utilities run in shallow trenches. The land stays largely intact and flexible. Small, ultra-high-performance monolithic modular buildings can be delivered on site quickly, allowing revenue, public use, or community benefit now without forcing a long-term commitment. If centralized buildings concentrate risk, then risk must be separated. If fixed structures fail all at once, then failure must be isolated. If large systems burn energy whether used or not, then systems must scale with occupancy. If land must remain flexible, then structures must be removable. The solution is not cosmetic upgrades. It is structural independence. 8. Why ultra-high-performance monolithic modular buildings change everything. Each building is a monolithic structure, a single solid concrete shell. No wood framing, no siding, no roofing systems to fail. Because the structure itself lasts for centuries, it avoids the repeated demolition and rebuilding cycles common in traditional offices. They're quiet, fire-resistant, extremely energy efficient. Failures are uncommon and isolated to one unit, not the whole campus. 9. Health by design. Workspaces shouldn't depend on shared air and shared corridors. Independent units mean separate ventilation, no shared hallways, direct exterior access, utilities dedicated to each individual workspace. Health resilience becomes structural, not procedural. 10. Net zero by design. Because ultra-high-performance monolithic modular buildings are small and efficient, net zero becomes practical. The building can make as much energy as it uses over a year. Smaller HVAC systems, lower energy demand. Solar works better at this scale. During shutdowns, large buildings still burn energy. Smaller independent units only use power when occupied, making net zero realistic even during disruption. Sustainability is built into the structure, not expensively layered on later. 11. Adaptive investment. Risk is spread across many ultra-high-performance monolithic modular buildings instead of one building. Spaces can change use. Units can be added or relocated. When the initial use is over, individual units can be sold, reused, or redeployed, preserving value instead of creating waste. The investment adapts instead of failing. Final close. The pandemic didn't change real estate. It revealed what already mattered. Buildings that adapt survive. Buildings that can't become a risk. Distributed, efficient, adaptable spaces are resilient to change. The future of work doesn't need bigger buildings. It needs adaptable ones. Ultra high performance monolithic modular buildings for work campuses.